Welcome to Maine, we're stretched to the bone. Prices keep rising, the paycheck stays prone. Inflation keeps knocking, won't leave us alone. They're selling the lie, groceries climbing, the gas tank is low. The bill's hitting harder than snow, but silence still blankets the truth. Where does it go? They're selling the lie. Housing is gridlocked from Portland to the county. Workers commute far past what feels soundly. Talk of solution comes yearly, not loudly. They're selling the lie. They're selling the lie. Say every voice counts, but watch who gets lifted. Some stories vanish, some get the spotlight shifted. Depends on what trends and what keeps them gifted. They're selling the lie. I won't believe them, I wanna believe, but truth's always stuck in between. Static and spin, drown the signal again. Nothing is what it seems. I wanna believe you, but every headline turns daylight into redesigned skies. Facts get twisted, context missing. We choke on the simplified alibis. Wanna believe you, but all I see is shadows where the answers should shine. The fact is fiction.
Welcome to the Muddy Waters Podcast, where Mainers tell their stories, unfiltered.
Welcome, as you've just been welcomed. I'll welcome you again by the AI generated video I have there. But I'll welcome you to the Muddy Waters Podcast. Thank you for joining. My name is Chuck Ellis, and I am your host as always. And we exist to help the people of Maine better understand what's going on in our state. And I do interview almost not exclusively, but a lot of like conservative and Republican politicians and people on the more conservative side. But I have, and I'm very willing to interview people on the other side of the aisle as well. So my goal here is to educate the people as best as I can, focusing on the side that's not being told. Again, the mainstream media at this point is it's basically became a propaganda arm of the Democrat Party, and it tries to go off the appearance of being centrist, so it can use its pretend neutrality in order to be able to spin, which is what propaganda is, right? And so we are here alongside other freedom fighters like Unquirer, Maine Next Community, and the Maine Wire, and there are some others out there. Trying to help the people of Maine better understand what's going on by giving conservatives a voice and like telling the stories that they won't tell. So fortunately, we have with us today Shawn Packard, who is a candidate for state representative in District 64, which is a portion or half of Waterville. Thank you for joining us, Shawn.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for being willing to do the thankless job of running for office. Being a politician, I think the conservatives in particular are very critical of even the people that do represent them. And it's like, what? Like, part of me looks at it and says, like, what is the motivation for somebody to run for office if they're going to be penalized for the fact that Maine voters didn't vote for enough Republicans, and they're going to be like, why aren't you doing more? And it's like, well, because we're in the minority. But just the running for office in the first place is a very thankless job. And I just want to thank you for taking that risk and that chance. And, it's not easy to stand up and say, hey, I believe this, regardless of whether it's Democrat or Republican, somebody's going to hate you for it. And so appreciate that.
I appreciate that from you. Yeah, it's something that I feel like a lot of people need to step up and do. I tell people that if you don't like what is happening in politics currently, you have a few options, right? You can vote differently on whatever may exist currently when that time comes, right? Or you can run for office and make that change. Or you can empower the person who is currently already in that seat to make some better changes. But that's about it, really. And we do have that system in place where people can talk to their representatives, and I feel like there's such a disconnect. There's no boots on the ground anymore, really, and that's really difficult for the citizens to be able to connect with somebody, even at a representative level, and be able to make change happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know it's really challenging. It doesn't really feel like our representatives are like I'm thinking of liberal representatives. I do feel like as a conservative, the conservatives listen to me. I don't know how well they do listening to liberals in their district, but like I feel like there are a lot of politicians who just want to say some talking points. There's not a lot of authenticity. Everybody's campaigning even when they're in office, essentially, and you don't really feel represented. And I think like that disconnect between the voters and the people that represent them is problematic. And I do think that there are other things that people can do outside. There are more ways that you can be involved. Like sharing information. One of the things that you can do if you're paying attention at home is you can like, share, and subscribe. It really helps get the information out there. It's a small thing that you can do to help more people know what's actually going on in our world. So I'd encourage you to do that. We're on all the socials, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, etc. So really encourage you to consider that. But so there are things that people can do. But I agree. If people are upset about what's going on, they need to find a way to get involved. And I appreciate you being willing to like take on like the running for office side. And so like to kind of get started, like who are you? Who is Shawn Packard? Son of Hewlett, I think you said earlier. I'm just kidding. But who are you? Where do you come from? And what has possessed you to decide that you want to run for office at one of the most politically divided times in our nation's history? Obviously, we had a civil war. It seems like we're in the midst of a ideological civil war presently. So like, who are you? Where do you come from? And why now?
Yeah, good question. So I grew up young in foster care, ended up going into foster care at 12. And then at the age of 14, I ended up meeting Paul LePage. And through the system from 12 to 14, I was kind of working on, DHHS's system, right? Essentially, I was offered a guardian ad litem in court, and I denied that. I said, I want to be the one to go up there and speak. I don't think that there should be somebody to tell my story other than me, even at that young of age. And because I'm quite well spoken, this ended up translating to opportunity with DHHS through a program called YLAT, which is youth leadership and training, I think, or something similar along those lines anyway. What ended up happening, though, or what I found, is that this was more of a front for DHHS for a few different purposes, but really the ability for them to use kids to do their job, really, and have them teach parents how to be parents, and teach incoming foster youth that everything's going to be okay, and that DHHS actually has your side, and all the jargon that they really just want other people to promote. And it wasn't until 14 and talking with Paul LePage, Mary Mayhew at the time, and Jim, head of OCFS, that those things didn't really feel settling, right? They felt like it's a bunch of jargon to make kids feel like they matter. But the system is broken, and we all hear that. But it's so broken and in ways that I don't think people quite understand. We since 2019 to now have had 155 deaths in the state custody. I mean, I've worked with Bill Diamond with the Walk a Mile in Our Shoes Foundation. So there's information. Actually, it's the most studied and documented source in the entire state, because we're dealing with children's lives. So anyway, I worked with Paul LePage, and we ended up working on the Reunification Act, which at the time DHHS forced reunified people. So whether let's say your parents were abusive, and then they go to jail, and they get out of jail a year later, you're to be reunified with that parent, and the problem and where the system's most broken is where there's not a lot of follow-up. Hey, did this person go seek any kind of counseling, or are they getting help, rehabilitation? Are they able to sustain having their child back in their home, right? And so what would happen is they just get replaced back in that home, and the stuff happens again, and then the kid, it's a cycle, and this is not good for kids.
No.
The problem was that there was no deciding factor, no one to say, hey, this kid really shouldn't be here, right? The CPS workers, the case managers, they all felt that. They all wanted to express those things, but the leadership in DHHS said, that's not how it works. We have to force reunify. Right. So we worked really hard to build a system where that isn't the case. And we were able to get it so that like a 12-year-old essentially can decide if they're in state custody, hey, do I want to go with my parents, or do I want to stay in state custody? So that was really important, and really good work. I also helped form and write and amend the Foster Youth Bill of Rights, which helps for people who are misdiagnosed and on medication that they really don't need to be on. And then now the kid has the ability to speak up against that system and say, hey, this is not for me. This diagnosis is not accurate. And actually, I was even told when I first went into custody that every child who goes into state custody has to receive a diagnosis. And that baffled me. And so this is why the system is very broken, and in minute areas that add up to be something very impactful for a kid's future, essentially. And when I say that, it did affect me even. I ended up at the time getting diagnosed with PTSD. And when I go to the hospital, for instance, right, they would assume that it was just an anxiety attack, essentially, every time, no matter what it was for. If I broke my arm, it would be like, you're having an anxiety attack. It's not the way it works, buddy. So these things, anyway, we worked really hard to fix that. Obviously, under what the administration is doing now, everything is pretty much reversed, and there's not a definitive oversight. We have a lot of gubernatorial candidates who want to push for DHHS oversight, and I'm in full support of that, especially for an independent oversight. The problem, though, is that, or it's not even really a problem. It's just they need to understand they ought to have somebody who has experienced both sides, both live the system and somebody who has reformed the system, so that they're able to accurately get somebody in there who's truly independent and understands those changes in those areas to best support these kids going forward. So I've already had some law experience, essentially. That's where I started, right? And over the years, ended up going back to school and got into media, and ended at my first basically role in Maine in the business field that I'm in now was with the radio station. And one of the first clients I had was a candidate, and I basically did a video for him, like a documentary. And so right back into it again with understanding how the candidacy works, helping them with their campaign, and building them up. And then again, I got another client who was running for select board, and I did the same thing. I actually worked more hands-on with him, making multiple videos, helping run his social media, and then bolstering him. And I joke with the fact that we made him look like the president, and he was just a selectman. But he overturned everybody in the fact that he had an exuberant amount of votes compared to everyone else, which allowed me to realize I kind of understand this political field a little bit more than maybe somebody averagely, because it working hand in hand with a lot of these individuals, and then the media aspect as well. So it was that gentleman, though, the very first client when it came to politics that I had for business relation, that him and I got into really good discussion. And he, with my story, my background, and expressiveness, and then desire to fix things, it was like, maybe you should run for office. and make some change actually happen here. And we need good people like you. And so that made me feel good, right? And I thought really hard about it. We've had some incidences happen, right? Not only Charlie Kirk's death, but just a lot of other things, come up in the community, even in my area right here in Waterville, right? Like there's, just the very high change of political discourse in the area. So I really want to step up and help establish a new foundation for not only what a politic or a political person supposed to conduct like, but also that actually impact the town and make a real difference. Theoretically, if I win, right, I'm supporting the constituents here in Waterville, but I'm also a state rep, which impacts the entire state. And so what can I do to actually impact our little community here? And that's kind of the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that you have obviously, like, that's one issue that I think you're going to pay attention to, and dealing with the most vulnerable, in our society. One of the most vulnerable subsets of our society, I would say, are these vulnerable children who have had who are in DHHS care, and as you've kind of highlighted, they're not being taken care of appropriately, and currently there's not enough safeguards, and people in my family are dealing with that system, and so I'm personally very aware of how poorly that organization is being run currently. Anyway, like I think that your experience personally, not just like being in the system itself, but also working to structure it, makes you uniquely positioned to be able to help with that issue in particular. What are the other issues that are important to you? What are the things that you hope to accomplish when you're, assuming you end up getting elected? We also talk about the challenges in where you're running, but right. Like we'll start with, like, what do you hope to accomplish?
Sure. So I have kind of three big goals, right? And number one, obviously, is the DHHS oversight. However that looks, obviously, it's going to be a discussion with whomever gets into the governorship, but I want to be that person to kind of help employ that and structure that the best way that I can, and be an advocate for whomever is in that seat. And then the second most important thing for me is education. I'm young, and I get that. I'm 28 years old, and there's a real bad disconnect with education these days. We have kids that feel like, they want to become YouTubers and all these other things, and they just don't really understand the realism behind any of it. I do a lot of community things, go to a technical center and a few universities in the area and talk about entrepreneurship and community outreach, and do like interviews with kids and kind of help prepare them for what the real world is actually like. And some of these kids, it's difficult. They have a hard time handshaking me, looking me in the eye, and then feeling confident enough to even speak with me. And I'm not hiring them, right? It's a mock interview essentially. But imagine if I were, and I have hired some kids, but I mean, the realism needs to be there. They need to take it seriously, because they're never going to get a career. They're just going to get a job, and there's a really big difference from having a career and a job. And so I try to help them and try to, the sad truth is, though, it's far too late. And we need to be building these kids up from the ground. And so anyway, when I speak about education particularly, I have two big things I like to talk about and propose, which one of them is performance-based teaching. If you ask any of the school systems, a lot of the kids' favorite teachers are JMG teachers, right? And if you look at how JMG structures their teaching and their teachers in general, right? They are paid performancely. They are not paid, on a standard scale. Each of them may be paid something differently because it's based on their student success rate. And so, and that's important, because every year you hear teachers want raises, or I want a raise, and well-deserved, I'm sure. But we need evidence that that's the case, right? And we need to weed out what is perform like good teaching essentially, and what is agenda-based learning, and all the wrong things that we are seeing that are leading to just nonsense essentially in education, because the education has to be most important, right? So that's kind of the teacher portion. Now the student portion, right? The student portion, we need to eventually, and I'm not saying immediately, but eventually we need to eliminate standardized testing. We need to move away from that. It was invented by Horace Mann in 1929, and it was for industrialization, which Maine is kind of dwindling when it comes to industries here. So I feel like we need to embrace more critical thinking, right, and more education-focused learning. And so we need to get the agendas out, and we need to get education in. And the way that we're able to do that, especially with all the advancements in technology, right? Pretend for a moment that I'm a kindergarten teacher, and I have 20 kids in my class, right? And I'm teaching mathematics today, and it's 2 + 5 or something, right? I have a paper that has the exact same math problems across the board for every student, just like I normally would, except Johnny wants to be a firefighter, and Molly over there wants to become an artist. Well, we would run everything ideally maybe through an AI system, right, to create that worksheet that has the same math problems but has fire trucks all over it, and then has art stuff all over it, so that piques their interest and they're interested in the learning. And that should happen all the way up into high school. And obviously I get it. Your creativeness and the desires you have as a student will change maybe overnight, and that's okay. That's where the power of AI comes in handy, is the fact that you can change these things on the fly and keep these students engaged. We have a record high of high school students either failing or dropping out, in comparison to a record high of students that are succeeding in vocational schools. Why is that? Because it piques their interest, and it keeps them engaged, and it keeps them in a work field, a working class field that they have a desire for. So how can we take the vocational ideology and put that into an educational plan that teaches them the math, the reading, the writing, and the sciences that will keep these kids actually educated? That's essentially the what we need as if you want to call it, standard for Maine.
There's a lot there. But my biggest concern is, if you're teaching kids problem solving skills, how are we going to control them?
Okay, so yeah,
that's a I'm being facetious, obviously, we shouldn't be, but
no, I get it. So yeah, and I guess a point to bring up is, a lot of people are like, well, how do you test the kids then, right? If there's no standard, right? Well, there is still testing, as always. So you would have your classic, I guess, midterm and final, right? But I would say after every session or topic, you would have a follow-up sheet that would have a fill in the blank to talk about what you've retained for information in these topics. And I think that's most important, because again, that sets up critical thinking. You don't have the answers in front of you. There is no multiple choice. What did you learn? Based on that information, we can realize where the kids are succeeding and where they're failing, and where we can critique the education plan for individual students to be able to best support them. This is not a goal of get rid of teachers. That isn't the goal. The goal is to empower teachers to do the best teaching method for each of the students.
Yeah, 100%. It's interesting. A lot of the way that testing is operated, I think of the way that I was tested, and this wasn't necessarily standardized testing, but it's one of the gaps and failures, I think, in tests and a lot of tests and quizzes. I remember they would ask, if you're reading a book, some really minute detail about something that I probably didn't pay attention to because it wasn't like important. And I would like I would miss something on the test because they were really just trying to figure out whether or not I'd read it, rather than trying to figure out whether or not I comprehended it. And I think that there are issues there, but standardized testing I've never really enjoyed. I think I got like a 1020. I'm outing myself on my SATs, like 500 in math somehow. And then I went to college and like just cruised through the math courses because I got a math degree. And so it's like standardized tests are not good. I would agree with you, are not good ways to understand how good a child is doing. That being said, like I think there are concerns that I think people are going to have, because right now, right. I remember so I live in Westbrook, and I remember a lot of the parents were upset about the fact that Westbrook is one of the worst schools in the state, and the state is one of the worst states in the nation, right? And the teachers are basically being like, we don't agree with standardized tests. My kids are smart and empathetic. This is what some of the teachers were saying, and it's like, okay, but like, how do we know that? Right. Like, and I think that becomes the challenge for like parents and people within the community. And like, here's the other side of it, though, that I think I would probably agree with you on. It's a new concept, like a new thing to me, because like we have to have some way to be able to appropriately evaluate how well these students are doing. But part of the reason that I can shoot back to these people who are like, my kids are smart and empathetic, is like, I've hired them, they're not. And I'm just being like, a little bit of a jerk here, but like I've worked in the real world. I see what's coming out of the school system, in people that I had to hire in a previous job. And it wasn't good. And like, they're not passing the straight face test. They're not passing the eye test. We know, and this is not the kids' fault, by the way. This is largely, to your point, this is not the teacher's fault either. There are some like rogue teachers who probably aren't teaching what they're supposed to be teaching. But a lot of it is more administration, I think. But yeah, I think that's where what's your plan for how to like give confidence to parents and people within the community and taxpayers that the kids are actually, qualitatively learning if we don't have some sort of standardized test?
Yeah. So it's sometimes, I think people misunderstand what that whole thing is. Standardized testing is that like AB, like MATs or MSD or whatever they're called now. We change them every year, I swear. But there's a systematic Maine testing essentially that we do for each of the kids, and we classify them based on a number essentially of how they did. But I'm simply removing that. The educational plans are still up to the schools, still up to the teachers. I just feel like they need to be more individualized, and then the testing will be replaced with something that is more, thought-based and critical thinking. So there's still going to be a test. It's just more fill in the blank, less of A, B, C, D, E. And that way we can actually see the retention and identify where they're failing and where they had interest and where they didn't. And then again, we look at that over, say, 2 or 3 years for that student. And if it's consistent, then we need as educators, right, to flip the script for that child so that we can help empower them to learn the way that they learn best. This isn't something where we're going to look at this and be like, well, it seems like Johnny, he really does do good with reading because he clearly retained the information. But when it comes to math, I don't know what's going on. Well, it's not like that, because the teacher has had, all this documented progress, and they've been trying to introduce things that are in the interest of that child. And if it's clearly not working, what are we doing wrong as educators, right? We always look to, I think we always instinctively look, well, what were the test scores? What's his home life like? Rather than looking inwardly at what are we teaching? So what can we do to change what we're teaching? Maybe just even for that kid individually to help him out the best way we can. I think one parent in the Waterville area asked me, what are we going to do for kids who have learning disabilities and all these other things. And I said, well, right now, the way that we are trying to, solve this issue is by having everybody fit into a category in the classroom, and everybody's normal, and or everybody's on one level, and that's not the reality. There are people who have really high exceeding IQ levels even at such a young age, and there are people who have far lower than the average, and we need to cater individually to each of those people and not feel like they need to be all in one classroom because everybody's normal, like or average or whatever the standard is. That we're different. We're all different, and that's okay. We need to embrace that and be okay with it. It's not about setting people aside or apart. It's about identifying how we can best help them, though. And that's like, there were, I don't know if there still are, right, but 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, gifted and talented classrooms, and there were teachers that may have had a regular Algebra 1 class, but taught one kid calculus in that class because he was far above everybody else. And it's less about like, well, today we're learning, Algebra 1 in this class. It's more, we're learning math. We're all here to learn math, and everybody learns differently. And I think we can all cater to that, especially with, again, the advancement in technology. These kids are going to use AI to do their homework. Like, we already know that, right? So like, how can we get ahead of that game and make sure that they're not using that, and more, we're the ones providing the information from said source, and they need to still go back and I know this is like, classic thinking, but they need to cite their sources. Where did they do actual research? Pick up a book once in a while, right? And have that critical thinking. And I think that's essentially where we need problem solvers. We don't need this ideology that we can just fix everything with a Google search,
or Grok. Yeah, no, I think what's interesting is I think AI, you mentioned that a number of times, and I think it's a really important tool for the future, right? Frightening when you're talking about education. I do want to get to at some point here to your other, because I think we've dealt with two of the three things, and then I'm sure I have other questions, but like it's AI is a really important tool for the future, and it's a tool that is an existential threat for American workers as well at the same time, right? So like, you talk about how at the current situation, kids who are coming out are not ready for the real world. They can't even have a conversation, can't even do a mock interview, right? This is very concerning. And they're headed toward a world where like they're going to have a much harder time getting a job if they can't think critically, because AI is out there, and AI is a great tool. And if you know how to use it, it can really enhance your ability to be productive. But like, if you don't know how to use it because you haven't developed critical thinking skills on your own, and you can't evaluate whether or not, what the information that it's spitting out to you is actually accurate. I've had a number of times where I've used AI because I use it, because it's a great, like I said, it's a great tool, but you have to be smarter than the tool in order to be effective at using it. Otherwise, you don't know whether or not it's right. And one of my favorite examples was, I was looking, there was a player last year who he ended up breaking the record for the most home runs hit by a catcher, and both total home runs and home runs hit by a catcher while playing catcher in the game, if that makes sense. And so I was doing a little bit of digging on that, and initially it's like, the current record is held by Johnny Bench at 38. And I was like, wait a second, the guy who is hitting this year has more than that. And it's like, you're right. That's not correct. The record is held by Javi Lopez, who had 42 in 2004. I was like, that's a long time after Johnny Bench. Like, this AI was way off, and I had to keep challenging it to get the right answer. And so it's a tool that can be used, but you have to be smarter than the tool. You have to be able to evaluate the information that's coming in. And if you haven't learned critical thinking skills, like you're suggesting, then you're not going to be able to be successful. And I want to just say, I really like what you're saying around, like, the amount of technology that we have to be able to aid in education is like incredible, right? And it part of me looks at this and says, like, I feel like there's a shift that's probably going to be coming to education that's going to be dramatic as a result of all of the access to information and tools to use in education that I'm not sure is being utilized by the current education system. But like, I really think one of the most important things that I've seen as I watch, I know a number of people have pulled their kids out of the education system, and some never even put their kids into the education system. We've got some friends with kids who are basically graduating and they've been homeschooled all the way along. They've taken advantage of homeschool co-ops and different things like that. And one of the things that they do a lot better than in the public education system is like what you're talking about, where the students are partially driving their education. They can't be in control of it, right? But you have to find ways to encourage them to be active learners where they're interested and excited about things. And so they want to do more research and they want to focus on this. And this is where they want to go, because kids need to be interested and they need to be like self-learners. I think that's one of the biggest things that you've kind of been talking about.
Yeah. So I was going to say that you brought up something, and it adds to one of the most important things in education that we've lost over the past 10, 15 years. And I'll say, so yes, self-learning is huge, but even more so that we've lost is self-discipline. So we have kids who right now have no need or desire to self-discipline because they are told and taught that they can do anything and be anything that they want, and in a world that will give everything to them. And if they don't like it, they can just simply speak out against it and change it. And that's unfortunately not necessarily true, or at least not the whole truth. They have to have an idea and an understanding of self-discipline. And this program, this idea essentially of changing how we're teaching helps empower that. And that's because, great, you love fire trucks and you're 12 years old. And then you start getting a bunch of information of what that actually is like, or you're learning about, firefighters and whatever. And then you're like, I don't actually like this. What do you have to do to change that, right? You have to speak out. You have to go out of your way and change your own learning method or your own interests. And that is just a fraction of self-discipline, to understand that what you're doing right now isn't the end all be all. And so kids need that. They need to be inspired to be able to have that self-discipline, so that they realize when they graduate, they can take a year gap if they want to. They can not go to college at all if they want to. And if they work at McDonald's currently, that isn't it. That isn't going to be the end all be all. That is simply where they are and where they're going to use to propel their next step. And how are they going to propel their next step, right? They're going to invest in things. They're going to get a car, get an apartment, and then they're going to look for other jobs that they can use the experience they've gained and then be able to move on to the next thing and slowly build up towards that career or towards where they want to work for, or build their own company, for instance. These are the self-discipline, the pieces of like, I can't even think of it. Sorry. You need confidence. Sorry. Confidence and passion. And I think that builds all this, right? Because again, if your teachers are interested in your learning as much as you are interested in that thing, then that passion and that it starts to build. And then you're able to be confident in your educational plan.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And like the self-discipline piece, I think gets at one of the other issues facing education from my perspective. And I wonder if you can speak. I mean, your personal story, I think probably is going to like kind of ties into this question to a degree, which is I ran for office in 2022 and 2024, and one of the things that I was running under in 2024 was education as well. And so I was like, I need to like figure out like what is the real problem in education, right? Like what is, and so like trying to understand what is the most significant thing that impacts the success or failure of a child. And all the experts basically will tell you that the most important thing is not the curriculum, it's not the teacher, it's not the administration. It's the parents. Engage and involve parents. And I think that's one of the most important things. Like, I'm not saying that we shouldn't focus on what we can do at the school system and with the kids while they're there, but like number one, I guess, wouldn't you not agree that that's one of the most important things? And then the second thing is there anything that we can do to help parents be more involved and engaged from an education standpoint or a societal standpoint even?
Yeah, I think so. I'll speak on two things. One, which is that the common thing that everybody wants to talk about is school choice, and I don't agree with that. And here's why. I feel like school choice, if I say I live in Waterville, right? I have two daughters. They go to a private school currently, but let's say they were in public school and I disagreed with their educational plan and no one was doing anything to change it. And I said, well, I look at Oakland and I want to send my kids there. And let's say that I do. And let's say that we have an administration where the money follows as well. Why I disagree with that thinking and that thought is because I'm not still supporting Waterville, and not financially, or really, I mean, if my point is to send them to another school system and help them with their plan there, then I guess I really don't care about financially supporting my own town. But that isn't actually my concern at all. My concern is the fact that if everybody decides that this system is broken and we send our kids to another school, we just created an even more broken system for the current school in our own town. And we need to build all these up and create something that we can all find that is successful, and or something that like if we can all identify that there's a broken problem or system or something that we don't like about it and we feel like we need to go somewhere else, why don't we just fix the problem where we are so that we can keep our kid in our own town? I mean, that's my thinking. I would think, why run from a situation and not face it like that? So I've always been like that. I'm going to face the problems and we're going to fix it together, hopefully. And so that's part one. Part two is, what can we do to empower the parents? I think again, it truly does come back to realizing what the kids' interests are. That's partly fueled by what the parents do or what their parents' interests are. And if the school is helping engage in that, I am sure that most parents will help engage in that too. And here's the other thing, right? You're like 50% of the property tax goes towards educational plans or like the educational system funds, right? We understand that may be how it is, and maybe that won't be how it is in the future. Nonetheless, I feel like parents, if they had to invest in their school or their child, which some do, even minutely, hey, we need to buy new school supplies. Hey, this kid loves sports. Like, we need to invest in that, right? Those things are happening in small scale right now. So they're more, I feel like, willing to do that if their kid is being successful in school, and if their kid shows interest in school. How many kids or how many parents have talked about their kids who are, quiet and don't want to do any sports in school? And they're like, I just don't understand, right? They kind of give up. They're like, well, I don't want to engage. Like, my kid's doing what their kid's doing. They go to school, they're making it by, even if it's just minimally, and even if they're not, maybe some parents, it's like they don't care or whatever. I don't know what the engagement level is. It varies per, and I'm not going to parent a parent, right? Like, that's not the goal. But what I can do is help encourage the interaction with the school system. So, essentially, if we can create a system where there is more engagement with the kid thus will kind of employ more engagement from the parents, right? And if the teachers at the school are caring so much about what the kid's doing and invested in what their interests are, then that's going to inherently pull in the parents to kind of figure out, like, isn't that weird, right? Like, think about it, right? Like, Chuck, if I had your kid and I'm your kid's teacher, and I'm super interested in your kid, and you're gonna be like, wait, why is he care so much about what my kid's doing? It's kind of weird. I got to find out what's going on. So then we have a conversation, and you realize I'm doing it for everyone, and now it's just because that's my job as a teacher, to educate and to empower the kid's educational plan. I think that alone sells the factor, and then you're in. You're like, yeah, like, whatever you need, I'll help you. So
yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. I will say that you said you don't want to parent the parents. Part of me does. I'm just gonna, like, and this is from a guy who currently has no kids. But just bear with me for like, I remember learning about dog training. I've said this on here before, and people told me, I've had people tell me not to say it. So I'm like, I'm going to say it more. I feel like in some ways the education system needs to learn some lessons from dog training, which if you take your dog to dog training, what you actually find out is that you're the one who gets trained on how to, because like when you deal with the issues of like self-discipline and some of those other issues, a significant portion of the problem are the mistakes and like that the parents, God love them, and I do, are making at home. And if they had some guidance and some help on, okay, if this is how you want to reinforce this, and this is how, like, that's something that could be beneficial. I understand, like, I don't want to like force anybody to do anything, but like some additional help. If you got a kid who's struggling and this is the area that they're struggling in, sharing some best tips on how to address that at home might be something that we could consider as we're engaging with the parents, right? Because we see and we know, like, I've seen situations where kids are difficult with their own kids, and then when they're with a grandmother or an aunt who like has really strong discipline with them, the child behaves very differently. And I think there are things that we could do with that to help parents understand. Yes, this is what's happening. This is how we can we can address that, and this is how you can help. I think is something that could be really valuable. But I've talked way too much. This is supposed to be about you. It's just I'm excited in the topic, and I think education is like we have no future if we don't have if we don't fix the education system here in the state. Right? It's just a reality.
They are the future, and we have to look at them that way, and we have to educate them that way. We can't keep pretending that they know everything that's best, because they cannot hold the cards to their own discipline and their own structure and their own education. Unfortunately, they don't have that education at all. You're a teacher for a reason, and if you're on a school board, you're listening to this, all these things, right? Like, you are that person who sets up those goals, those expectations for the future of everything, not just the country, not just politics, not just even education, everything. And so if we don't set that precedent for these kids and have them take it quite seriously, then if we're not taking it seriously, no one will.
Yeah, 100%. So we've got the DHS system that needs to be addressed. We've got education that needs to be addressed. And you said you had another element to your platform.
I have one last one, and that is right here in Waterville, we have a low barrier homeless shelter. And for me, I've in the past 10, 15 years seen the influx of homeless individuals and people who are addicts of various types. And it's just kind of bloomed, and this is the real problem here, which is that Waterville, being a low barrier homeless shelter, they also claim that they are a rehabilitation center. But they don't really have a clear mission statement, and that is not, you can't really be both. Like, at the end of the day, you can't just accept people who shoot up 5 seconds before you walk in and then also say that you're helping them. And when I say helping them, spending $1 million on needles that you give out to help their addiction. Like, that isn't a rehabilitation center or a that's not a solution. It's a Band-Aid. And we all hear that, right? We all know that these are problems in our area, and businesses, like, I'm a small business owner, and businesses in this area see that there's an influx of people down on their luck, and that nobody's helping them. Our homeless shelter also decides that taking federal money and 70% of their budget comes from government funds is better than investing in the community. And when I say that, not like obviously spending money in the community, they need to get money from the community. They need to be independently driven. They need support from small business owners and business owners in the area to be able to feel like they're impacting this area to the best of their ability. And that's the board's job. That's their mission, or should be their mission statement, is to actually help these individuals get off their feet. And we have a really weird homeless shelter. I mean, just the whole thing's broken, but like we have what seems like a forever live-in system on the second floor, where people There's like, 12, 13 rooms, and people can just, it is a rent fee, but a lot of these people are on subsidy, so it's free. And they're, essentially, I hate to coin it this way, but mooching off from a system, and there's no actual incentive to help get off their feet. And they've, some people have lived there for 5, 6, 7 years, and that shouldn't be the goal, right? Like, it should be a temporary live-in system where, hey, we're going to put you upstairs, and it's $200 a month or whatever the cost is. I don't know, but that system is in place for 4 to 6 months, and then the idea is that you're working and you're getting out there, and we're going to help you, employ you. We're going to help empower you to be able to get a job and a career path, and then once you're on your feet and you're able to afford a place, we're going to help you with that too. We may even establish section 8 for you, or like a down payment plan or whatever that looks like, and get you into your own apartment, and set you up the best way we can, give you meal plans, set you up with food for a while. Like, these are the things that, like, just common sense, like, they're very easy and everybody can get behind, and we're not doing it. Like, we're failing these people. I've talked to the local police department. We have about 40 individuals at any given time, just walking the street. They have no place to go. And we have a homeless encampment behind a supermarket up on KMD, and that's not in my direct district, but I mean, it doesn't matter. The point is that encampment actually is right in, like, there's a hill essentially, and then the supermarket, but below that hill is residential homes, and it's people's backyard, which are fenced in for most of it. But I live, again, right here in Waterville. I have a fenced in backyard, but I can't imagine if I had a hill there. And I told my daughters yeah, you can go play out in the backyard. And they do. And there's a bunch of juiced up people right up on the top of the hill, and they're right there, and nobody's doing anything. Trash is overflowing the hill. And this is not helping the situation at all. We need to help them, because, as the saying goes, again, like, these people are potentially just down on their luck, and we need to help them. I don't know everyone's situation. Some people may desire to live this way, or whatever, but we have to actually be empowering these people to live a productive life in the area and give back to society. And we, as a society, need to give back to them. A lot of these people are veterans, and I feel like we've not helped them the way that they need to. And simply, a lot of it is just getting them to their services that they already have. They just don't have the transportation or a bed to sleep at night. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the most challenging things. I think, actually, like, I think I told you that when I was running, I had a number of issues that were some of my issues, and one of them was homelessness, addiction, and mental health, right? And I feel like those three are all interconnected there. And I would agree with you that what we're doing is not really helping. Enabling destructive behavior in the name of helping somebody survive a little bit longer, so that they might eventually, why, I don't know, change their behaviors when there's nothing that's pushing them to do it. Like, the thing that would push them,
but it's political. It comes down to that, right? At the end of the day, who is the one supplying the $1 billion or $1 million needle program? Like, these are Democratic individuals who are saying, we are supporting you, by the way, go vote. Like, essentially, and that isn't the right way to be. We're not buying vote. This isn't about better. This is to better people's lives. There should never be a clean needle program. Like, that is ridiculous. There should not. Like, I understand methadone clinics, Suboxetone, and all this stuff, but people are just converting one drug to another. And then like, I talked to local taxi drivers who say they have to pick up this person, and they've been picking them up for the past 15 years, and they just are going to the methadone clinic because they traded one addiction for another. And so our solution is not to say, hey, we are going to give out free Narcan, and so go ahead and go get high, and then when you're feel like you're going to die, come here and we'll help you. Like, that isn't That isn't a solution. That is, again, simply a Band-Aid. A solution is to create a real rehabilitation clinic where we are in there with them in the trenches, as you will, and really supporting them and understanding that, yeah, it's going to be a really difficult road. And I talk about it like quitting cold turkey, and where you get the sickness and the sweats and all these things, but like, that's a part of it. I'm sorry that you're the one that took drugs, but I'm going to help you through it, and I'm going to be there and hold your hand through it. That is support, right? Because when you come out of that, you'll understand that somebody was there for you and somebody helped you, and then you will have a clean mind to be able to know what to do next. And you know what? We're there for that too. That's what we need, and we're not doing that. And there are, and a whole nother topic someday, but there are drugs out there that are way better than Suboxetone and all these other I've brought up Ibogaine before, and of course it's not FDA approved. It's not in this in the States. And why aren't we having conversations about that? If it works, the success rate is very high, and the only problem, if any, is an increased heart rate or heart palpitations. And it's like, if that's it, I think that's better than some dude getting doped up all the time and falling back on a new addiction. So. But of course, those conversations will never happen because it's something that actually works. It's like if somebody had a cure for cancer, they'd shut it down real fast,
Well, we need to figure out how, with whatever solution we come up with, we need to figure out how the pharmaceutical companies can still make money off of it.
Right.
Right. I mean, I obviously, again, I
know what you mean. I know you're joking, but it's true. That's unfortunately, that's the world we live in. And so, So you're right in the fact that that's our capitalistic society. And so sure,
it is our capitalistic society, but what's really interesting is the people who claim to be anti-capitalist are championing it.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting. Right. Interesting. Just for fun. So great topic. One of the things I think, we got to bring back clinics. We got to, obviously I'm not in favor of taking away people's rights. However, if you're doing something that's illegal, such as spending time in a space where you're not supposed to be, then you're eligible to be arrested. And then your options are jail or like some sort of mental health facility to help you get off of drug addiction or deal with your mental health issues. I think those are things that we threw the baby out with the bathwater when we eliminated. I would say, I would include geez, my brain's not working. Orphanages in this conversation, but whether it's orphanages, because the current. We got rid of institutions, whether it's mental health institutions, right. Drug addiction recovery centers, or which I feel like those two are kind of joint and combined.
So I'll give you an example. In Waterville, we Inland Hospital goes out of business, right? And then because of the large load happening, the other hospital in town is like, well, let's minimize our mental health section to allow for more intake of ER patients. And so it's right. Like the one thing you need
at this time in 2026 or 2025, whenever this, are you kidding? This is when we've got the most instance of mental health issues that I think we've had in our nation's history. And now we're going to I think we should reduce. And okay, wow.
So we just what we need is real help and advocacy for these people. Again, I don't want to assume that these people choose to be in that situation ever. And I feel like they all are crying for help and no one's listening. And some of them have such a quiet voice, and we need to be there and give them that voice and give them that support. And until I get proven otherwise, everybody fits into that category. And I know there are some bad eggs. There are bad eggs everywhere, but I choose to believe that I will find out based on having that conversation with them if they're a bad egg or not. It's going to be based on me believing rather than just an opinion from somebody else. That's not how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I also don't want to say that necessarily people are like a bad egg, or I think my opinion is that there's always hope for somebody as long as they're still breathing. But like we need to do the things. Again, this is kind of like that. Even that ideology is part of what they say around. Oh, we got to give people these fresh needles so that they don't die of like something else. And it's like, no. Like I think we need real solutions that really help because we actually care about people, and we need to. I think one of the mistakes that I think the Democrats make is they create policies that sound good rather than actually work, and we need results-based solutions to this issue. The reality is, no matter what direction you take, some people are going to die. They're currently dying. People are dying of overdoses in these encampments. So people are currently dying, and so it's almost like it's interesting. Sometimes you start this conversation and you say, well, some people are going to die, and people are like, how dare you say that? I mean, they're doing it right now. And so, yes, whatever solution that we present is probably going to lead to some of these people, unfortunately, maybe due to not having a clean needle because we didn't give them a clean needle, dying. However, are we going to save lives? Are we going to get more people out? And I think that's the question we have to ask. And if that's the question, then we need to do what actually makes sense and what actually, according to data and statistics, and we can see is working other places. And
I mean, it comes back down to that self-discipline piece, right? If these people want to have help, then it doesn't matter whether we give them a clean needle or not. At the end of the day, the people who actually want help I would hope would choose not the clean needle over getting actual true support and solutions. And the people who don't want help, whether it's a clean needle or not, could still die. And so why are we supplying and spending so much taxpayer dollars on something that doesn't actually solve a problem? Our money is supposed to help revitalize the towns and help add solutions to problems, and we're not really doing that. Rather than fixing the potholes, what we're doing is giving drugs and clean needles out to people, which I hate to compare the two, that somebody's life is but that's the thing. I think that people look at it that way. Democrats look at it like, well, you care more about a pothole than you do about somebody's life. And it's like, no, not really. No, actually I do. But it's just that you're not offering a solution. And so who really doesn't care about their life? We need real solutions, not Band-Aids. I mean, and I know that's been going around for years, and I don't actually, that is a problem that I'm trying to face, right? And while I could present a million, common sense solutions, that's going to take a team, and it's going to take unity in our area to actually solve that. But I feel like me in that portion, stepping up and actually having those difficult conversations is the key portion. We're not going to settle for giving addictions out to people, and we're actually gonna solve this head on.
Yeah, no. Well, I appreciate that. I remember too, like, just because anecdotally, I guess, or whatever, like there was a post that was made in social media at a number of different places. Somebody at a school, at a city council, talking about the needle program and how ridiculous it is, right? And in the comments, you would be surprised how many people were like, "I'm a former addict. This is not helpful. Like, I'm a former addict. This is not." And so many people who escaped the being an addict and recognizing that the solution that what they're calling a solution is not a solution, and we need real solutions. And I appreciate that you're running and you're coming with real solutions to the problems that our state faces. There's tons of other problems that our state face. I think we could spend hours talking about them. But do you have any other things that you want to share about your campaign, or how can people find you, follow you? Imagine your campaign is looking for some sort of donations.
Absolutely, I am running traditional. Yeah,
campaigns cost money, I'm told.
They do.
I remember from running mine, but So tell me about that.
Yeah. So first, I guess the last thing I want to say before giving out that closing stuff is I'm somebody who obviously helped Paul LePage, and I feel like, despite the context with that, I think that people always ask my opinion, or everybody has an opinion on Paul LePage or Trump and all this stuff. And the reality is, you may not like whomever is in any position ever, okay, but at the end of the day, you have to respect their role. And so everybody says, like, what do you think of Governor Mills and all this stuff, right? Especially because she's reversed a lot of the things that I helped put out there. At the
Mm.
end of the day, I'm not somebody who's going to ever, talk down about another person in that regard. They're in that role. They were voted in for that role. I may not agree with that. I may not have voted that way, but that doesn't make me not realize the respect for that role and the respect for an elder. And so that going forward, I say that because I'm somebody that when I present these solutions for these three topics and others going forward, it is something that we need unification on. We need to reach across aisles to get these things done. Doesn't matter whether we someday have a majority or not, right? The solutions have to be unified at a unified front. These things that I brought up today are not one-sided. I think everybody can get behind them. They're common sense. They're things that I'm simply asking for accountability and understanding and respect from individuals, and having that difficult conversation sometimes. And I think that's the approach. That's where I'm coming from. Yes, I am running Republican, but at the end of the day, I'm willing to have those conversations. As you mentioned in the beginning, you're willing to talk to other candidates, maybe on the other side of the aisle, and that's totally fine. The key factor, though, is that what is the goal of what we're trying to achieve, and that should be unified. We shouldn't be at each other's throats as much. I'm trying to, I guess, diminish that gap, so as much as we can. I know that there's going to be views that are completely opposite than mine, and I'm not going to talk about those things. I have my set morals and values, and they are probably opposite from that opinion on the other side, which is totally fine. But where can we agree, and where can we provide solutions? And these three topics are hopefully those areas where we can agree upon. So that's number one. And then number two, where can people find me? Right, on social media. I feel like I'm blowing up, and I don't know, I've had people come up to me and say, hey, I saw all this video, and I'm like, great. I didn't even know. So the goal is obviously to grow the followers, get the word out there as much as I can. So any support in that is huge. You can find me right on Facebook. It's Shawn M. Packard for State Rep 64. And I have a website too, Packard for FOR 64.com, and it has all the links, so people can go on and find Facebook. And there's a donate option right on there, so people can donate directly through the site. And otherwise, reach out. My contact is all on there. You can reach out through Facebook. You can reach out on the site. You can and you can my number's on there. Give me a call, give me a text, whatever you need. I'm there to have that conversation with you, and let's figure out how we can better the state of Maine and lead it into the next generation.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you again for running. And you made a comment about how, sometimes when people talk positively about themselves, it's like, wow, that person's very, very, like, I don't know, arrogant. Sometimes you think arrogant, but you made a comment early on that when you were a kid, when you started getting involved in stuff, that you were very well spoken. And I agree with that sentiment, is the thing that I'm going to say. You didn't say it boastfully. You just said it matter of fact. And I think it is a fact. And you've done a really good job outlaying why you're running and what your primary issues are and where you stand on those. And I think that we do need more. Sometimes I feel like it's challenging with people on the other side of the aisle. I would love to see more people come in and actually be able to have correct conversations and collaborate. And we do need to return to a society. I think there are a lot of people that feel like it's, how can we possibly do that when they, whatever. Sure. And I think that's on both sides of the aisle, but we need to find ways to lower the temperature, so to speak, I think.
You're right. And think about it. So if I get in as a state representative, right, I will sit on, or hopefully get the opportunity to sit in a, selected, like desired category that they may have committee, right? And that committee has Democrats and Republicans in the room, right? And they're voting upon and making decisions on things that impact that category. If we can do that, and we can understand that that does work collaboratively, whether we like it or not, right? Then why can't we do that for the bills? Why can't we do that for everything? And we do come up with good solutions. We do come up with real change in those committees. I just don't understand why the 155 and the 36 don't also understand that sometimes that's how it works. Like, we can just have those conversations. And again, I don't care. At the end of the day, we may not agree, right? But at least we had the conversation to be able to present it, right? I feel like we, and I'm seeing this now going out, right, campaigning and talking with all these people. Everyone wants to stray away from talking, just talking with the other side at all. Like, nobody wants to have any kind of conversation. And I don't think that's the way it should be. Like, why can't we just have a conversation at the end of the day? Like, again, I'm not going to I would never push any, like, for instance, my campaign little slogan thing is faith, family, and fundamentals. There is never a moment that you will see that I'm going to push my faith upon anyone. Is it a part of what has helped me morally and in values and where I have an understanding of where I come from and all the things of how fundamentally I may have, speak or how I was raised or whatnot, right? I think that's all important. But at the end of the day, nor should I expect that they are pushing agendas onto me, okay? That's just common sense, and it's respect. I give my respect, and I expect the same back, right? That classic golden rule, right? Yeah. So if we can get on that same page, then I believe we can have a conversation of almost any topic. And I'm okay doing that, right? Again, I don't care. At the end of the day, we're not trying to convince each other to agree or disagree, but just talk about it. Let's talk about it, because I guarantee in that conversation, we will find where we can agree.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's a noble task, and I wish you well. Obviously, I think you had kind of indicated your district is a little bit more challenging for somebody who's more conservative. So, hopefully you can get over the finish line. I think you're a unique and dynamic individual, so I'm hopeful that can happen, because we need more younger people, I think, and people who have problem solving skills, which you've demonstrated to me that you have in Augusta, who are willing to ask the difficult questions, and I think you're willing to do that. So I wish you luck, and thank you for taking the time to come on the podcast and run for office, and because that is a sacrifice, just even of your, people will look at you differently simply because you're running for office. So I appreciate you for doing that. So, and thank you everybody for listening and watching. We'll be back on, actually it's later today. I've got another guy coming on 6:00 if you want to do a double header. If not, you can always watch later. And we'll see you again in the near future. Any last words for the podcast? Not last words, but Sean.
No, I feel free to reach out again. I hope to hear from as many people as I can. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. I am running a candidacy, so I do have to have some funds. So if you feel like you agreed or resonated with anything that happened today, and as we were talking, I would love your support. And that doesn't have to come from dollars necessarily. You can just share the content that's on Facebook, and just spread the word. As we did talk about, I am running in a very difficult district. It hasn't been flipped in roughly 20 years. So let's do that. And it's only been read twice, really, Paul LePage and Paul Boudreau. So let's if for nothing else, let's start that conversation and see where it goes. So appreciate it.
Sounds good. Thanks.